This is big breaking news. A massive riot has broken out in a major U.S. city, and President Trump is now warning that he could go into the city, potentially have National Guard deployments. We could see this soon. So let's get into all the details here. You guys can see this is coming out of Fox News. It says, President says Chicagoans are chanting, quote, "Bring in Trump," after violent downtown riot leaves 8 shot and 1 dead. It says several teens shot, multiple officers attacked during 300-person riot in Chicago Loop. All right, so that just happened last night, and that was actually during a Christmas ceremony. So we have another Christmas ceremony event just going up in chaos. All right, we had a potential attack on one last night, and then we have a major riot happening here. You can also see, we'll get into more details of that in just a second, but you can see it says judge orders Trump administration to end National Guard deployment in Washington, D.C. This just came out in the past few days, and I thought this was kind of surprising because Washington, D.C. is technically even under federal jurisdiction, and they're even saying that Trump can't deploy the National Guard there. So I'm not sure, if he can't deploy it there, where can he deploy it? And this will go to the Supreme Court, as along with multiple other cases where he's been blocked in places like Portland. But you can see here it says a federal judge on Thursday ordered that the Trump administration to end its months-long deployment of National Guard troops to help police the nation's capital. U.S. District Judge Gia Cobb concluded that President Trump's military takeover of Washington, D.C. illegally intrudes on local officials' authority to direct law enforcement in the district. She put her order on hold for 21 days to allow for an appeal, however. All right, so we will get into more details of that. But you can see here, this is what Trump just posted on his Truth Social as well. It says, quote, "Massive crime and rioting in the Chicago Loop area. Multiple police officers attacked and badly injured. 300 people rioting. 6 victims shot. 1 critical and 1 dead. In the meantime, Governor Pritzker and the low IQ mayor of Chicago are refusing federal government help for a situation that could quickly be remedied. The people are chanting, quote, 'Bring in Trump.'" So this obviously means Trump wants to deploy National Guard to Chicago, quote, "Bring in Trump," right? I don't think he's going to go there personally and stop the rioting. He might go there and visit, but this means bring in the National Guard. And if he keeps getting blocked enough times by these federal judges, he could eventually invoke the Insurrection Act as well too. That's always a possibility that he has kept open. All right, and this is some of the footage of this riot. All right, police officers running to the scene. This was near State and Lake in Chicago. They're saying 300 people were involved. And you can see here some more details. It says at least 8 teens were shot, 1 fatally, sadly, and multiple police officers were attacked Friday after a riot broke out in the Chicago Loop, the city's downtown central business district. Quote, "Massive crime and rioting in the Chicago Loop area. Multiple police officers attacked and badly injured. 300 people rioting. 6 victims, 1 critical, 1 dead," Trump wrote on his Truth Social post on Saturday. And it goes on to say the riot, which followed a Christmas tree lighting ceremony, broke out near State and Randolph Street at about 10 p.m. Friday, Fox 32 Chicago reported. So this is another Christmas tree lighting ceremony, completely different one, that had this riot break out now too. Like, what's going on here? can't even go to a Christmas tree ceremony without just chaos. It shouldn't be like this. Our cities should not be like this. Shouldn't have to feel unsafe in our big cities in America. It says City Alderman Brian Hopkins of Chicago's 2nd Ward said 300 juveniles were rioting and attacking officers with mace and stun guns. At least one officer was hospitalized for their injuries. He confirmed at least 6 children were shot, including a 13-year-old, 2 14-year-olds, a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, and a 17-year-old. It's crazy. Right? Very sad. Shouldn't be like this. Nobody should have to live like this. Less than an hour later, there was a casualty. Alright, so, man. And while stuff like this is happening, federal judges are blocking the National Guard deployments. Alright, so I'm not sure what the real basis they have for this, saying the president doesn't have the authority. They're saying he can't unilaterally deploy the D.C. National Guard to help with crime control as he sees fit or call in troops from other states. After the ruling, Schwab called for troops to be sent home, quote, normalizing the use of military troops for domestic law enforcement sets a dangerous precedent where the president can disregard states' independence and deploy troops wherever and whenever he wants, with no check on his military power. So, I mean, this has happened throughout history. There's been situations where the National Guard has been brought in to, stop civil unrest, stop riots, disturbances, and the National Guard was even brought in for things like segregation, even things like that they were brought in. So it can be brought in for when segregation ended. So they can be brought in for a whole host of different things. And to just argue that he can't bring it in for crime and for safety, I mean, that should be one of the easiest things. What else are they brought in for if you can't bring it in for safety and crime? I mean, what has to happen? Does a hurricane have to hit? A tornado? Does there have to be a natural disaster? When can they be brought in to help? It says the White House stood by their deployment. Quote, President Trump is well within his lawful authority to deploy the National Guard in Washington, D.C. to protect federal assets and assist law enforcement with specific tasks. It says, quote, this lawsuit is nothing more than another attempt at the detriment of D.C. residents to undermine the president's highly successful operations to stop violent crime in D.C. And crime has been way down in D.C. It's true. And there's also a big difference between the National Guard and the U.S. military. Okay, the National Guard, they are, they're trained and they're professionals, and we need them. All right, we're thankful for them. But at the same time, they're not the U.S. military. Okay, they're not training every single day. Most of them are civilians, and they're National Guardsmen and women part-time. And they're not the U.S. military where this is day in, day out. They're living, breathing this, and they're training to, for war. All right, so it's a little bit different. They're training for domestic things. They know they're going to be interacting with the public. They mostly train to help people, natural disasters, for seaborne events, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, things like that. They're mostly responding to stuff like that. They're not just trained to be, fighting machines here. And I don't think it's a big deal to have them deployed to help with crime. A lot of these cities, it's bad. People don't want to go to some of these cities because the crime is just bad. And it's just obvious in a lot of these places there's been a breakdown, deterioration of just the social contracts and norms, and people are just doing whatever they want in some of these places. It says here in August, President Trump issued an executive order declaring a crime emergency in Washington, and 2,300 National Guard troops from 8 states and the district were patrolling the city under the command of the Secretary of the Army. Trump also deployed hundreds of federal agents to assist in patrols. All right, so I think we're going to see a big deployment to Chicago soon. All right, and Trump is putting this pressure on the governors. They have been more cooperative and allowed, like initially they were saying, hey, we're not going to allow any in. And then they were more cooperative and have been allowing Trump to at least deploy some troops and then fighting it in court, right? Because they were being threatened that they could face arrest or anything like that if they did not cooperate with the federal government. That's what Trump and the DOJ was threatening. Okay, so they kind of backed down on that sense, but they're still fighting it in court, right? And these judges are holding up a lot of these operations, but they're going to win most likely. The Trump administration is going to win, and even if they don't, they're going to appeal to the Supreme Court and most likely win on that basis, because they could always just argue, okay, we are going to implement the Insurrection Act, and then that gives them leeway to deploy troops wherever they want, and they can always just federalize these troops as well too. That's something that they haven't done, so they've been using troops from willing states to deploy to other states. So like some of the troops being deployed to Chicago are from Texas. Okay, so they're from other states that are more willing to supply their National Guard. They've been sending them. But at the same time, Trump has the option to as well, besides the Insurrection Act, to just federalize the National Guard for certain states. So if the Illinois governor was not cooperating to deploy National Guardsmen to Chicago, Trump could also just federalize these guardsmen, and then they are directly under control of the president. So I don't know, kind of doesn't really make sense, this argument this judge is saying. It seems like there's multiple legal pathways and that the president has authority to do this. So let me know what you guys think down below. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying prepared, staying stocked up. I hope you have big blessings for your life and your family, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.